Pay for all my friends, princess. My girlfriend humiliated me in a luxury restaurant, then dumped me for a rich man she claimed gave her the life she deserved. But her lies, greed, and manipulation to destroy everything she touched. We were at the most expensive restaurant in the city, surrounded by her 5 friends who wouldn't stop ordering expensive dishes and wines. When the bill came, Daniela passed it to me with that smile I knew so well, the one she used when she expected me to do something without question. I looked at the total, $4,200 for a dinner for people who hadn't even said a word to me all night. I slid the bill back to her. Daniela, this is too much. I can pay for ours, but your friends can cover their own. The silence at the table was immediate. Her friends exchanged glances, some raising their eyebrows with expressions of surprise and contempt. Daniela looked at me as if I'd just spit on her plate. Excuse me. Her voice was cold, sharp. I said I can pay our part, but oh, princess. She interrupted me with a fake laugh. What echoed among her friends? Are you really going to do this here in front of my friends? The word princess came out of her mouth like poison disguised as affection. Her friends began to chuckle, covering their mouths with their hands, but not hiding their amusement at my humiliation. I'm not doing anything, I replied, staying calm, though I felt my blood boiling under my skin. I'm just being reasonable. Reasonable, Daniela repeated sarcastically, turning to her friends. Girls, did you hear? My boyfriend is being reasonable. The laughter intensified. Monica, her best friend, a blonde with long hair who had always treated me with disdain, leaned forward. Daniela, honey, maybe you should find someone who can give you the life you deserve. A real man, not a princess. The words fell on the table like stones. The waiter approached timidly, the bill still unpaid on his tray. Daniela grabbed her purse, stood up with dramatic movements, and looked down at me. You know what, Matthias? You're right. I'm going to find someone who will give me the life I deserve. Someone who won't embarrass me in front of my friends over a miserable $4,000. Daniela, no, we're done. You pay the bill if you care so much about money. And she left the restaurant with her friends, following her like a procession of judgment, all of them shooting me looks of contempt as they passed. I was left sitting there with the bill in my hand and the attention of the whole restaurant on me. The waiter cleared his throat uncomfortably. I took out my card and paid the $4,200. Every cent hurt, but not as much as the humiliation I'd just suffered. As I signed the receipt, something inside me changed. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't anger, it was absolute clarity. I met Daniela 3 years ago at an art gallery. I worked as a civil engineer at a renowned firm. I earned well, but I wasn't a millionaire. She worked in public relations for a cosmetics brand, a position that sounded more important than it really was. From the beginning, there was a strange dynamic. She always expected me to pay for everything, to take her to expensive places, to buy her expensive gifts, and I, like a fool in love, did it without question. But in the last 6 months, the demands had escalated. It was no longer just an occasional expensive dinner or a gift on special occasions. It was all the time. Her friends had become a constant part of our life, and they all shared the same attitude. I had to finance their lifestyle because I was the man in the relationship. That night at the restaurant wasn't the first time she called me a princess. She'd done it before, always with that smile that pretended to be affectionate, but carried a sharp edge. She did it when I refused to buy her something, when I suggested cheaper alternatives, when I dared to question her spending, and every time she did it in front of other people, as if my embarrassment amused her. I got to my apartment, a modern 2-bedroom place I'd bought with my own effort, and poured myself a whiskey. My phone started vibrating. Messages from Daniela. I hope you're happy. You made me look like an idiot. My friends are right. You were never enough for me. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and started reviewing something I'd been putting off. The shared finances. Technically, we didn't live together, but for the last year I'd been paying her rent temporarily because she was between jobs. I also paid for her car, her phone, and I'd given her access to one of my credit cards for emergencies. The emergencies turned out to be designer clothes, spa treatments, and expensive dinners with her friends. In total, I had spent over $80,000 on her in 1 year. $80,000 that would never be thanked, that would never be acknowledged, that only served to maintain her image as a successful woman in front of her friends. My phone rang. It was a call from Daniela. I let it go to voicemail. Immediately another message. If you don't answer, I'm going to assume we're really over, I smiled. That was exactly what I wanted, but I wasn't going to make things so easy for her. The next day, I started making calls. First to the bank to cancel her access to my credit card. Second, to her apartment's landlord to notify him that I wouldn't be renewing her rent payment. Third, to the car agency to cancel the financing plan I was covering. I did all this methodically, without emotion, as if I were closing work projects, because that's exactly what it was, closing a chapter that had consumed too much of my time, money, and dignity. Daniela didn't communicate all day. She probably expected me to be the first to apologize, to beg for her forgiveness, to plead for another chance. But I had learned something important that night at the restaurant. Humiliation has a price, and mine was already paid. That afternoon, while reviewing some blueprints in my office, my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo. Daniela, on a yacht, hugging a man I recognized immediately. Rodrigo Salazar, son of one of the richest developers in the city. The message said, "I found someone who can give me what I deserve. Thanks for showing me what I don't want in a man." I looked at the photo for a long moment. Rodrigo Salazar, I knew him professionally. In fact, I'd worked on 2 projects with his father's company. What Daniela didn't know, what her friends didn't know, what no one in her superficial circle knew, was that Rodrigo Salazar had a reputation for being the worst kind of man, a womanizer, manipulative, and known for leaving his girlfriends in emotional and financial ruin. But there was something else Daniela didn't know, something that was about to change everything. I put my phone away and went back to my work with a smile I hadn't had in months. 2 weeks passed without Daniela contacting me. Her silence was predictable. She had gotten exactly what she wanted. A man with money who wouldn't question her expenses, who would take her on yachts, who would fulfill her every whim without batting an eye. Daniela's social media became a showcase of her new life. Photos in exclusive restaurants, trips to Cancun, designer handbags that cost more than an average person's monthly salary. And in every photo, Rodrigo Salazar appeared with that arrogant smile I knew so well. Her friends commented on every post with heart emojis and phrases like, "You deserve it, queen," or "This is what you call an upgrade." Monica, the unbearable blonde, even shared one of the photos with the text, "When you finally find a real man and not a princess." I'm not going to lie. The first few times I saw those posts, I felt a pang, not of jealousy, but of anger for having invested so much in someone so superficial. But that anger transformed into something more useful. Determination. What Daniela didn't know was that I had moved on with my life strategically. I canceled all the payments I made for her, but I hadn't explicitly told her I had. I wanted her to find out for herself, to face the consequences of her decisions without the safety net I had been. The first blow came a week after her photo on the yacht. Her apartment's landlord called her, informing her she had 15 days to pay the overdue rent or be evicted. Daniela, confident that I would continue paying as always, hadn't covered a single month. I found out because I heard her complaining in an Instagram story, although she quickly deleted it. The second blow was her car. The agency notified her that the financing plan was canceled and that she had to return the vehicle or take over the payments herself. I received a message from her at 11 at night, the first in weeks. "Matthias, you canceled the payments for my apartment and my car." I waited 3 hours before replying. A manipulation tactic she had used on me countless times. "Yes, we're not together anymore, so there's no reason for me to cover your expenses." Her response was immediate. "You're a resentful bastard. I can't believe you're so miserable. You left me, Daniela. You got what you wanted. Now so have I." She didn't reply after that, but I knew the message had affected her because her social media posts decreased drastically. There were no more daily photos with Rodrigo, no more constant bragging. The silence told me more than any words. Meanwhile, I focused on my work with renewed intensity. Without the constant distraction of Daniela's demands, without the pressure of financing a lifestyle that wasn't mine, my productivity skyrocketed. I finished an important project 3 weeks ahead of schedule, which earned me the recognition of the firm's senior partners. It was during a meeting with those partners that I met Elena, an architect, 32 years old, with a genuine smile and a passion for her work that was evident in every word she said. She didn't wear designer clothes. She didn't have hundreds of thousands of followers on social media, but when she talked about her projects, her eyes shone with a light I had never seen in Daniela. We started working together on a luxury residential development. The meetings extended longer than necessary. The conversations drifted to personal topics. Laughter became frequent. I wasn't looking for a relationship. After Daniela, the last thing I wanted was to get emotionally involved with someone. But Elena was different. She didn't expect me to pay for everything. In fact, she insisted on splitting the bills when we went out to eat to discuss the project. She didn't show off her life on social media. She didn't call me a princess or humiliate me in front of others. It was refreshing. It was healthy. It was what my relationship with Daniela should have been from the beginning. A month after the breakup, I received a call from Rodrigo Salazar. It was strange because we'd never had that kind of close relationship. We only knew each other professionally, and our interactions had always been formal. "Matthias, I need to talk to you about a sensitive issue," he said. His voice sounded tense, different from his usual arrogant tone. "What's up, Rodrigo?" "It's about Daniela, your ex-girlfriend." My stomach tensed. "What about her?" "Look, I know you two broke up and she's with me now, but there's something you need to know because this involves you directly." I sat down at my desk, bracing myself for what was coming. "Daniela told me you're still married, that you're just temporarily separated, but that you're still legally husband and wife." It took me a second to process what I'd just heard. "What?" "Rodrigo, Daniela and I were never married. We didn't even live together." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "So she lied to me." His voice now sounded cold, calculating. "She told me you were married and that you were an abusive husband who controlled her financially. That's why she needed me to help her with her expenses while she was processing the divorce." I felt a mix of disbelief and rage. Daniela's betrayal and manipulation knew no bounds. "Rodrigo, I can assure you we were never married, and as for financial control, the reality is the exact opposite. I paid for everything for her." "I see," he replied. "That explains a lot." "Look, Matthias, I'm going to be honest with you. Daniela has been getting money from me under the excuse of legal fees for the supposed divorce. I've given her more than $50,000 in the last month." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Welcome to the club. This isn't going to stay like this," Rodrigo said with a determination I recognized. "I'm going to expose this woman for what she is, a scammer." "Rodrigo, let me give you some advice," I said, although part of me enjoyed his suffering. "Daniela is an expert at playing the victim. If you confront her directly, she'll turn the story around on you, and you'll end up looking like the bad guy. You need concrete proof." "I have it. All the transfers, all the messages where she asked me for money for supposed divorce lawyers, everything." "Then use it wisely." We hung up, and I stared at my phone. The irony was almost poetic. Daniela had sought out a rich man to give her the life she deserved, and had found someone who wouldn't tolerate her manipulation the same way I had for so long. That night, Elena and I had dinner at a small Italian restaurant downtown. Nothing ostentatious, nothing pretentious, just good food and better company. "You look different," Elena told me as we shared a bottle of red wine. "Lighter, as if a weight has been lifted off your shoulders." "That's exactly how I feel," I admitted. I was in a toxic relationship for years and didn't realize it until it was over. "The girl who always posted pictures on yachts and in expensive restaurants," she asked with a knowing smile. "You know her?" "Just from social events. She always seemed like the type of person who measures her self-worth by the labels on her clothes." "That's a perfect description." Elena took my hand across the table. "You deserve someone who values you for who you are, not for what you can give them." Her words touched something deep inside me. For 3 years with Daniela, I never felt valued for myself. I was always a means to an end, a wallet with legs, a fairy tale prince who had to fulfill all her wishes without expecting anything in return. 2 days later, the scandal erupted. Rodrigo Salazar posted all the proof of Daniela's lies on his social media. Screenshots of conversations where she asked him for money for non-existent lawyers, bank transfers with false concepts, even an audio recording where Daniela admitted she had exaggerated her situation to get more money from him. The post went viral in a matter of hours. The same friends who had celebrated her upgrade were now in damage control mode, deleting previous comments and distancing themselves. Monica, the unbearable one, even posted something like "I always suspected something wasn't right" when just weeks before she had been celebrating the relationship. My phone exploded with messages, mutual friends asking me if I'd seen what was happening. Some even offered apologies for having believed Daniela's version of our breakup. Apparently, She had been telling everyone that I was a controlling and stingy man who had left her in emotional ruin. But the message that impacted me the most came at midnight. It was from Daniela. Matthias, please, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. I didn't reply immediately. I let the message sit there, unread from her perspective, while I decided what my next move would be. Daniela had spent weeks showing off her new life, indirectly humiliating me on social media, allowing her friends to ridicule me publicly. Now that her castle of lies had collapsed, she came looking for me. The next morning, as I was having coffee in my apartment, more messages arrived. Matthias, I know you're seeing this. Please, everything Rodrigo said is taken out of context. I need you to help me clear things up. You know what I'm really like. The last sentence made me laugh bitterly. Yes, I knew what she was really like. That's why I was exactly where I was. I decided to reply not out of compassion, but because I wanted to make it clear that my silence had been a choice, not a weakness. Daniela, I have nothing to clear up. What Rodrigo published is a matter between you two. I just want to move on with my life. Her reply came in seconds. How can you be so cruel? I'm being publicly destroyed and you act like you don't care. You publicly destroyed me weeks ago when you called me a princess in front of your friends, when you posted that you had found a real man, when you allowed me to be ridiculed on social media. This is just the consequence of your decisions. That was different. I was angry and I'm at peace. I'm not getting involved in your drama, Daniela. Solve your problems yourself. I blocked her number after that. I didn't need any more of her manipulation and her attempts to make me feel guilty for the consequences of her own actions. The following days were revealing. Several acquaintances started telling me stories about Daniela I'd never heard. A friend of a friend told me she had tried the same strategy with a previous boyfriend, making up stories to get money. A co-worker from her cosmetics company confided that Daniela had been fired months ago for minor embezzlement, but had managed to reach an agreement to avoid legal charges. Each revelation showed me that the woman I'd been with for 3 years was a complete stranger to me. Or maybe she had always been like that, and I had been too blinded by what I thought was love. Elena became my refuge during those chaotic days. She didn't ask invasive questions. She didn't pressure me to talk if I didn't want to. She was just there. One afternoon, while we were working on the residential project, she said something that stuck with me. You know, Matthias, there's a difference between being with someone because you need them and being with someone because you choose them. The first is desperation disguised as love. The second is freedom. She was right. With Daniela, I had been a necessity, a resource, a solution to her financial problems. With Elena, we were just beginning to get to know each other, but I already felt that it was a mutual choice based on respect and genuine admiration. A week after Rodrigo exposed Daniela, I got a call from Monica. Yes, the same Monica who had called me a princess that night at the restaurant. Matthias, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to tell you something important about Daniela. Why should I listen to you, Monica? You were one of the people who most enjoyed humiliating me. I know and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but there's something you need to know. Daniela is planning something against you. That got my attention. What kind of something? She's saying you're going to go look for her, that you're going to beg her to come back because you can't live without her. She's getting all her friends ready to record the moment and post it on social media to rehabilitate her image. The audacity was impressive. Even after everything, Daniela still believed she could manipulate me. Monica, thanks for the heads up, but I have no intention of looking for Daniela. She's so convinced you will that she has everything ready. She's going to be at the cafe where you had your first date this Saturday at 3 p.m. waiting for you. Well, she's going to be waiting a long time, Matthias. Is there anything else? Monica's voice became more serious. Daniela confessed something to me when she was drunk a few days ago. She said she never really loved you. That from the beginning she was only with you because you were her backup plan while she found someone with more money. I'm sorry, I know that's hard to hear. It wasn't hard, it was liberating. That confession eliminated any residual doubt I might have had about whether I had made the right decision by walking away from her. Thanks for telling me, Monica, but honestly, that just confirms what I already knew. I was a terrible friend to you, she admitted. We all were. We got carried away by Rodrigo's money and appearances. But now that I see how it all ended, I realize that the real man was the one who was always there, paying bills that weren't his and enduring humiliation without saying a word. Monica, I appreciate the apology, but it doesn't change anything. You all showed who you really are. I hung up too, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because every day I was moving further away from that toxic world. Sadness because I had lost 3 years of my life in a relationship that never had a real foundation. On Saturday at 3 in the afternoon, while Daniela was supposedly waiting for me at that cafe, I was at the movies with Elena watching a film she had wanted to see. It wasn't an expensive movie in an exclusive theater. It was a normal theater, with normal popcorn and the best company I'd had in years. Elena knew nothing about the supposed meeting Daniela had planned. There was no reason to tell her. That part of my life was closed, filed away, overcome. That night Monica sent me screenshots. Daniela had posted a story on Instagram from the cafe with a text that said, "Some people don't deserve second chances. When they don't even show up to apologize, you know you made the right decision." The irony made me smile. She had turned my absence into a victory for herself, when in reality, it only showed how disconnected she was from reality. But the real surprise came on Sunday morning. An article on a local gossip blog was titled "The Truth Behind the Salazar Scandal. More Victims Come to Light." The article detailed how 3 other women had contacted the blog after seeing Rodrigo's post, each with similar stories about Daniela. One had been her roommate, and Daniela had left her with unpaid debts. Another was a distant cousin from whom she had borrowed money for a medical emergency that never existed. The third was a former co-worker who had covered for her on multiple occasions when Daniela missed work to go on trips. The pattern was clear. Daniela had been doing this for years, using people as disposable resources, manipulating situations for her benefit, and discarding anyone who was no longer useful to her. My phone rang. It was a private number. I answered cautiously. "Matthias." It was the voice of an older woman I didn't recognize. "Yes. Who's speaking?" "I'm Gabriella, Daniela's mother. I need to talk to you about my daughter." My body tensed. I hadn't anticipated this. "Mrs. Gabriella, with all due respect, I don't think we have anything to talk about. Please, just give me 5 minutes. It's important." Something in her voice made me agree. 5 minutes. "Matthias, I know what my daughter did to you. I know how she treated you, how she used you, and I need you to know that I didn't raise her that way. I don't know when she became this person, but what's happening to her now is a consequence of her decisions. Why are you telling me this?" "Because Daniela is at my house now, completely destroyed. She's lost her apartment, her car, her friends have abandoned her, and Rodrigo is suing her for fraud. She's in the worst crisis of her life and still doesn't understand that she caused all of this herself." I waited, not knowing what to say. "I'm not asking you to forgive her or to go back to her. I just needed you to know that as a mother, I'm ashamed of the decisions my daughter made. And I wanted to apologize on her behalf because I know she never will. Mrs. Gabriella, I appreciate your words, but what happened between Daniela and me is in the past. I wish your daughter the best, but my life is now going in another direction. I understand. Thank you for listening to me, Matthias. You were too good for her." She hung up before I could reply. The call from Daniela's mother left me with mixed feelings. On one hand, I felt a dark satisfaction knowing that Daniela was finally facing the consequences of her actions. On the other hand, a small part of me, the part that had genuinely loved her years ago, felt something like pity, but that part was getting smaller, more distant, like a fading echo. The following days passed with surprising normality. Daniela's scandal became old gossip, replaced by other dramas on social media. Life went on, indifferent to the personal tragedies unfolding within it. Elena and I grew closer. Our work lunches turned into dinners that had nothing to do with the project. We talked about everything, from architecture to TV series, from dream trips to deep fears. It was refreshing to have conversations that didn't revolve around money, appearances, or superficial expectations. One night, as we were walking through the park after dinner, Elena asked me directly about Daniela. "Do you still think about her?" I considered the question honestly. Sometimes not with nostalgia or regret, but rather with amazement that I didn't realize sooner what our relationship really was, and what was it? A transaction. She gave me company, and I paid for the privilege of having her by my side. It was never real love, at least not on her part. Elena nodded thoughtfully. "You know what's saddest? That she probably thinks that's love, that getting things from someone is equivalent to being loved." She was right. Daniela had confused love with material provision. She had measured the value of relationships by the size of the bills paid and the gifts received. And in the end, that confusion had led to her own destruction. 2 weeks after her mother's call, Daniela showed up at my office. There was no prior announcement, no warning messages. She was just there when I came out of a meeting, sitting in the reception waiting area. She looked different. The perfect makeup had been replaced by a washed face showing deep dark circles. The designer clothes had given way to simple jeans and a sweatshirt. The hair that was always perfectly styled was now pulled back in a messy ponytail. Matthias, she stood up when she saw me, her eyes immediately filling with tears. Please, I need to talk to you. I looked around the reception area. My colleagues were feigning curiosity behind computer screens, but I knew they were all paying attention. It was the last scene I wanted to star in at my workplace. Daniela, you can't just show up here unannounced. I know, but you weren't answering my calls, and this couldn't wait any longer. What's so urgent? My life is falling apart, Matthias. I have nowhere to live. I lost my job. All my friends have turned their backs on me, and Rodrigo is suing me for $100,000 that he says I stole from him. Daniela, I'm sorry you're going through that, but it's not my problem. How can you be so cold? Her voice rose, attracting even more attention. We were together for 3 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It meant something until you publicly humiliated me. You called me a princess. You told me you'd found someone better, and then I found out you never really loved me. Her face turned pale. Who told you that? It doesn't matter who. What matters is that now I see our relationship for what it really was. And frankly, Daniela, I wish you the best, but I'm not going to be your safety net again. I just need a place to stay for a few weeks until I find a job and can afford my own apartment. The request was so predictable it almost made me laugh after everything that had happened. After all the humiliation and manipulation, she still believed she could use me as her backup plan again. No, just that. You have nothing else to say? No, Daniela, you can't stay with me. I can't help you financially. I can't be a part of your life in any way. I'm sorry, but that's it. This is because of that architect, isn't it? Her tone changed from pleading to accusation. I saw you with her the other day. You've already replaced me as if I meant nothing. Elena is not your replacement. And yes, I'm seeing her, but that has nothing to do with my decision. Even if I weren't with anyone, my answer would still be no. Daniela stared at me with a mixture of disbelief and rage. You know what, Matthias? You were right. You are a princess. A bitter princess who can't get over being left for someone better. And you're someone who still doesn't understand why she is where she is. I hope you figure it out someday, Daniela. I really do. I turned around and went back to my office, leaving her standing in the reception. Through the window, I saw her walk away with slumped shoulders and a bowed head. A small part of me felt compassion, but the larger part, the part that had learned its lesson, knew that helping her would only prolong her inability to face the consequences of her actions. That night, as I told Elena what happened during dinner at my apartment, she listened in silence before saying something that surprised me. You know, part of me feels sorry for her. It doesn't justify what she did to you, but it's sad to see someone so lost in their own illusions. You're more compassionate than I am. I admit it. I just feel relief that she's not my problem anymore. It's not a lack of compassion, Matthias. It's self-preservation. There's a difference between having empathy for someone's suffering and allowing that suffering to become your responsibility. Elena had a way of seeing things that made me reflect. With Daniela, every problem was my responsibility to solve. Every crisis required my intervention. Every whim demanded my attention and my money. With Elena, there was a balance. She had her problems, and I had mine, and we supported each other without losing our individuality. A week after the encounter at my office, Monica contacted me again, this time with information I didn't expect. Matthias, I thought you should know this. Daniela is saying you're harassing her, that you won't leave her alone, that you're constantly sending her messages asking her to come back. What? That's completely false. I blocked her weeks ago. I know. We all know it's a lie, but she's trying to gain sympathy from anyone who will listen. Some people are believing her, especially people who didn't know either of you very well. Why are you telling me this, Monica? I thought you and Daniela were best friends. We were. Until she asked to borrow money from me using the same story she used with Rodrigo. She told me she needed to pay a lawyer for a lawsuit you had supposedly filed against her. I lent her $5,000. Then I found out there's no lawsuit, and she used the money to go on a weekend trip to Acapulco with some guy she met on a dating app. I'm sorry, Monica. I know what it feels like to be used by her. I know, and that's why I'm calling you. Daniela won't stop until someone stops her. She's falling into a deeper and deeper spiral and dragging anyone she can with her. What do you suggest I do? Document everything. Save any communication you have with her, any attempt at contact. If this escalates, you'll need proof that you're not the one harassing her. I followed Monica's advice. I took screenshots of all the conversations, saved the voicemails Daniela had left before I blocked her, and documented the incident at my office with an official report to Human Resources. I didn't want to need that evidence, but I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Meanwhile, my relationship with Elena flourished in ways I had never experienced with Daniela. There was no constant drama, no impossible demands, no mind games or manipulation. Just two adults building something together step by step, with mutual respect and honest communication. A month later, Elena and I took our first trip together. Nothing extravagant, just a weekend at the beach 3 hours from the city. It was simple, relaxed, perfect. We didn't need the 5-star resort or the private yacht to enjoy our time together. The company was enough. It was during that trip that Elena asked me a question that took me by surprise. Matthias, do you ever regret everything that happened with Daniela? I looked at the ocean, listening to the sound of the waves, feeling the sand between my toes. I answered honestly. I regret the time I lost, the money I spent, the dignity I sacrificed, but I don't regret that it ended. If I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be here now with you. Elena smiled and took my hand. Sometimes the worst experiences lead us to the best places. She was right, and as I watched the sunset with her, I realized I had finally found something real. Not a transaction disguised as a relationship, not a performance for social media, but a genuine connection based on shared values and mutual respect. But the story with Daniela wasn't completely over yet. There was one last chapter, one that would change everything in ways I could never have imagined. 3 months after my last encounter with Daniela, I received a legal summons. My heart sank when I saw the official envelope. Daniela was suing me for emotional distress and financial abandonment. According to the documents, she alleged that I had left her in a vulnerable situation by suddenly canceling all the payments we had mutually committed to maintaining, and that this had caused her severe emotional stress, requiring psychological treatment. The lawsuit requested $210,000 in compensation. I immediately called a lawyer. Ricardo Fuentes, a 50-year-old man with a reputation for being relentless in family and civil relations cases, reviewed the documents with a serious expression. "This has no legal basis," he said. "Finally, you weren't married. You had no children. You shared no properties. The payments you made were voluntary, not contractual. She doesn't have a case, so why is she doing it?" 2 possible reasons. 1, she really believes she's entitled to your money. 2, she's trying to pressure you into an out-of-court settlement and give her some money to drop the lawsuit. "I'm not giving her another penny." Ricardo smiled. "Good, then we'll countersue. I have a few ideas." Over the next few weeks, as we prepared our defense and countersuit, more details about Daniela's current life came to light. Monica, who now seemed to have taken on the role of unofficial informant, kept me updated. Daniela is living with her mother, but the relationship is tense. Her mother is pressuring her to get a job, any job, but Daniela refuses to accept anything she considers beneath her. And Rodrigo, his lawsuit is still ongoing. Apparently, he has irrefutable proof of the fraud. Daniela could face criminal charges if they don't reach a settlement. The situation was getting complicated for Daniela in ways I had never anticipated. Part of me felt justified, but another, ever smaller part, wondered if all this was necessary. Elena got me out of those doubts one night while we were having dinner at her apartment. "Matthias, you're going to wonder if you were too hard on her. You're going to question if you could have handled things differently. But remember this, you didn't create this situation. Daniela did with her decisions. You just refused to be her lifeboat." She was right. I had set healthy boundaries. The fact that those boundaries had consequences for Daniela was not my responsibility. The preliminary hearing for the lawsuit took place in a civil court on a Tuesday morning. I arrived early with Ricardo, both formally dressed. Daniela arrived 15 minutes late, accompanied by a lawyer who looked as confident as someone who knows they're defending a losing case. When our eyes met across the room, I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Real fear. Not the theatrical manipulation she used to use, but a genuine fear of what might happen. The judge reviewed the documents from both parties. Daniela's lawsuit and our countersuit for defamation and harassment based on the lies she had been spreading about me. Miss Daniela, the judge began after reviewing everything. Do you have any document that proves Mr. Matthias had a legal obligation to make the payments you mention? Her lawyer cleared his throat. Your Honor, the obligation was moral, not contractual. There was a romantic relationship where patterns of financial support had been established. Patterns of financial support. The judge raised an eyebrow. Was there cohabitation? No, Your Honor. Children in common? No, Your Honor. Any written agreement? No, Your Honor. But then there's no legal basis for this lawsuit. The judge interrupted. Voluntary payments in a dating relationship don't create future legal obligations. The lawsuit is dismissed. I saw Daniela's face fall. Her lawyer tried to protest, but the judge silenced him with a gesture. As for Mr. Matthias's countersuit, the judge continued. I see he has documentation of false statements made by Miss Daniela. This will proceed to trial if the parties don't reach an agreement. After the hearing in the courthouse hallway, Daniela's lawyer approached Ricardo. My client is willing to retract any public statements if Mr. Matthias withdraws his countersuit. Ricardo looked at me. The decision was mine. I accept, I finally said, but with one condition. That she signs a document acknowledging that all the statements she made about me were false and that she agrees never to contact me again. If she violates that, the countersuit is automatically reactivated with triple damages. The lawyer nodded and went to consult with Daniela. 10 minutes later, he returned with the signed agreement. It was strange. After months of drama, of manipulation, of lies and accusations, it all ended with a signature on a piece of paper. Daniela didn't even look at me when she left the courthouse. She just left with slumped shoulders and defeat written on every line of her body. How do you feel? Ricardo asked me as he put away the documents. Liberated, I answered honestly. Finally liberated. That night I celebrated with Elena at her apartment. It wasn't a grand celebration, just a simple dinner and a bottle of wine, but it meant more than any expensive dinner in exclusive restaurants with Daniela. So it's all over? Elena asked. It's all over, I confirmed, legally, emotionally, in every possible way. And how do you really feel? Without the commonplaces about liberation and closure. I thought about her question carefully. I feel like I've woken up from a long and confusing dream. For 3 years I lived in this alternate reality where I thought love meant unilateral sacrifice, where I believed that if I gave enough, I would eventually be valued. Now I see how wrong I was. Elena took my hand. True love is mutual. It's not a transaction or a sacrifice. It's a choice that both people make every day. Her words resonated deeply with me. With Daniela, there was never a mutual choice, only unilateral expectations and manipulation disguised as affection. Thank you, I told her, for showing me what a real relationship can be like. 2 weeks later, Monica sent me one last informative message. Daniela moved to another city, Guadalajara, I think. Her mother finally convinced her to start over somewhere else. I thought you'd want to know. Thanks for letting me know, Monica. I hope she finds what she's looking for, whatever that may be. Matthias, before we stop talking for good, I want to apologize one more time. I was complicit in her toxic behavior. I treated you badly because she did, and I thought it was normal. It wasn't. Monica, we all make mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them. And with that message, I closed that chapter of my life completely. A year after that night at the restaurant where it all began, I found myself sitting in the same place, but this time everything was different. Elena was in front of me, radiant in a blue dress that matched her eyes. We hadn't come to impress anyone or to prove anything. We simply wanted to celebrate our anniversary in a place that ironically marked the end of my previous life and the beginning of the new one. Did you ever imagine you'd come back here? Elena asked with a smile as she browsed the menu. Honestly, no. But I like the idea of replacing a bad memory with a good one. The waiter approached. The same one who had witnessed my humiliation that day. He recognized me immediately, and his expression showed surprise seeing me with someone different. Good evening, sir. I'm glad to see you again. We ordered without looking at the prices, without worrying about impressing anyone. The conversation flowed naturally about our work project, which had turned out to be a resounding success. The residential development we designed together had won a Sustainable Architecture Award and had opened doors for us to more ambitious projects. "I've been thinking about something," Elena said as we shared dessert. "Do you ever regret how things ended with Daniela?" "No," I replied without hesitation. "I regret the time I lost, but not how it ended. She needed to face the consequences of her actions. I needed to learn to value myself." "Do you know anything about her?" "Just what I occasionally hear. According to Monica, she's working in a department store in Guadalajara, selling perfumes, I think. Apparently, she's completely off social media. Do you think she's learned anything?" I considered the question. "I hope so, but honestly, it's not my concern anymore. Everyone builds their own life with the decisions they make." The conversation shifted to happier topics. The trip we were planning to Italy, the apartment we were considering buying together, the plans to open our own architecture and engineering firm. With Elena, everything was a collaboration. We split expenses equally, made decisions together, supported each other without losing our individuality. It was what a relationship should always be and never was with Daniela. When the bill came, Elena took out her card before I could get mine. "My turn," she said firmly. "You can pay for the next one." It was a small but significant detail. It represented everything that was different in this relationship. Balance, respect, reciprocity. As we were leaving the restaurant, my phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. "Matthias, it's Daniela. I know we agreed not to contact each other, but I needed to tell you something. I don't expect a response, I just need you to know this. You were right about everything. I spent this year reflecting on my decisions, on how I treated people, on who I became. I'm in therapy now, working on my issues. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand the damage I caused. I wish you the best. Goodbye." I read the message twice. I didn't feel triumph or satisfaction, just a sense of definitive closure. "Who was it?" Elena asked. "Daniela, a farewell message, I think. Are you going to reply?" I looked at the message one more time before blocking the number. "No, some chapters need to end without a shared epilogue." Elena nodded understandingly and took my hand as we walked to the car. 6 months after that night, Elena and I moved in together into an apartment we chose and bought as equal partners. There was no drama, no unrealistic expectations, no manipulation, just two people building a life together. Occasionally, when I passed by places I had frequented with Daniela, I remembered fragments of that relationship, but the memories no longer hurt. They were simply lessons learned, scars that reminded me of my growth. Monica told me months later that Daniela had completely changed. She worked full-time, lived alone in a modest apartment, had cut contact with the friends who had used her and whom she had used. Apparently, she was rebuilding her life from scratch, with humility and real work. She says it was the best thing that could have happened to her. Monica told me. Hitting rock bottom forced her to look in the mirror, and she didn't like what she saw. "I'm happy for her," I replied honestly. "Everyone deserves a chance to grow." And it was true. I held no grudge. The anger and resentment I felt for months had transformed into healthy indifference. Daniela was simply someone who had been part of my past, a person who taught me valuable lessons about what I didn't want in a relationship. Elena became my life partner in every sense. We opened our firm together, combining her architectural genius with my engineering expertise. Projects came in constantly, and our reputation grew not because of ostentation, but because of quality work. One afternoon, while we were reviewing plans in our office, Elena asked me an unexpected question. "Did you ever wonder why you put up with Daniela for so long?" "All the time. I guess I confused sacrifice with love. I thought that if I gave enough, it would eventually be reciprocated. And now I understand that real love doesn't require you to empty yourself to fill someone else. It requires two whole people to choose to build something together." Elena smiled and returned to the plans, but she took my hand on the table, a small gesture that meant everything. 2 years after that humiliating night at the restaurant, I realized Daniela had done me a favor. By showing me her true self, by humiliating me publicly, by pushing me out of her life in search of someone better, she had freed me from a prison I had built myself. I never saw her again. I never looked for information about her again. Her life followed its course, and mine followed mine. two trajectories that had briefly crossed before separating forever. And as I looked at Elena, focused on her work, laughing at a silly mistake in the calculations, offering brilliant ideas to solve complex problems, I knew with absolute certainty that I had found what Daniela could never give me. A real partner. Some stories don't end with dramatic revenge or poetic retribution. They end with the simple realization that you deserve better and the conscious decision to build that better with your own hands. Daniela looked for someone to give her the life she thought she deserved, and in the end, she got it. Only that life turned out to be very different from what she had imagined. One of honest work, forced humility, and lessons learned the hard way. I also got the life I deserved, a life of mutual respect, genuine love, and success built on solid foundations of integrity and shared effort. And looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. Because every humiliation, every manipulation, every painful moment with Daniela had led me exactly where I needed to be. Have you ever been in a situation where someone looked down on you for not meeting their material expectations? How did you handle that situation? I'd love to read your experience in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for joining me until the end of this personal story.